What is going on, everybody? Happy Saturday. My name is Tyler. Hopefully you enjoyed my video yesterday previewing the women's Final Four. If you haven't watched that already, it will be linked at the end of this video as well as down below in the description. Watch it though after this one because today marks the start of the men's Final Four in the NCAA tournament. I will be previewing both games. Should be very exciting games if I do say so myself. And then giving my predictions for them. I will not be previewing the championship game. That will come in a video on Monday. So that's why I'll just give my predictions of who I think will play, but I'm really looking at the two specific games for this one. I will not be previewing any championship games. And first off, I will say, with all the upsets that there was, and yes, I know there's an 11 seed in the Final Four in UCLA. Hats off to them. First for the Final Four. One of the first, if not the first team ever to do so. I just still find it amazing how we still end up with 2 1s and a 2 seed. In Baylor, Gonzaga, and Houston. That is remarkable, to say the least, because look at all the teams that lost in the first 2 rounds. Illinois, Texas, Ohio State, Purdue, Tennessee, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. I'm trying to go. Alabama made it to the Elite Eight. I don't remember when Iowa lost. They lost to USC, right? No. No, they lost to Oregon. They lost to Oregon in the second round. Iowa did. Virginia, Kansas, etc., etc. All those teams, and yet we still end up with 2 1s, a 2, and then the 11 being a Cinderella this year. But I will go game by game. We'll start off with the first one, Baylor, Houston, the number 1 seed, and then a number 2 seed. That game tips off at 5:14 p.m. today. By the way, the women's games had nice, easy tip-off times. It was 6 p.m. and I think 9:30 or 9 o'clock. Or maybe 8:30. I don't remember. But the men's games, 5:14, and then the other one tips off at 8:34. Just pick even numbers. Come on. I guess that's the difference between CBS and ESPN. But if both companies want to hire me, I'll gladly take it. Start with the Baylor Bears. So I have my notes here, similar to I did the women's, just because it's easier to write everything down than clicking back and forth, if you know what I mean. 83 points per game, 65.5 opponent scoring, or opponent points per game. 48.6 field goal percentage, while their opponents shoot 43.2 Baylor. 41.1% from 3, 70.1% from the free throw line, and they average about 11.8 free throws per game. So, very efficient shooting team in the grand scheme of things. I like their shooting from the field. They can get it done inside and outside. We've seen that all year in the Big 12, and they will get up and run. That is going to be another thing. It's going to be a high-scoring game between Baylor and Houston. If it does come down to free throws, though, which I would not be surprised. Excuse me, I had something in my eye. I would not be surprised. The 70.1% is a little concerning. Fortunately for them, their top guy, or one of their top guys, is an 86% free throw shooter. So that should not be too bad in that regard. But you get someone like a Davion Mitchell who shoots 63.3% from the free throw line in a pressure situation. You got to knock down the first end of a 1-and-1. That could hurt you big time, but who knows from that standpoint. They're also very good at rebounding basketball, 36 rebounds per game. Their opponents average about 32.2, so maybe not very good was a good description, but they are better than their opponents more often than not. But what will probably happen is it's going to be a lot of turnovers. Baylor forces 17.3 turnovers per game, 21.3 points off those turnovers, and 9 steals per game. So even though they might not be crashing the boards, something that Houston is very good at, went second in the country, I believe, in offensive rebounds prior to their game against Syracuse, I know. I don't know if that still has held up. So where they might not out-rebound you, they'll still put a lot of pressure on you and force a lot of turnovers and then get out in transition, get a lot of easy buckets on a fast break, which could be helpful in the later moments when it's a pressure situation. If Houston has to make a play, Baylor, with their pressure, they force Houston to make a mistake. And they're also good passing the ball team, 16.6 assists per game. That's just a nice little note to have. It's a 3-headed monster, really, on this Baylor team. Jared Butler, 16.5 points per game, 4.7 assists, 46% from the field, 40.4% from 3, and 76.2% from the free throw line. So a very well-balanced shooter, can get it done inside, driving to the basket for himself, and then also can create a shot off the 3, whether it be catch and shoot or off the dribble. And then is competent at the line. Like I mentioned, if it comes down to free throws, I wouldn't be sweating if I was Baylor with Jared Butler. Now, if it happens a lot, yeah, then I'm sweating a little bit, but I'm not too worried. Then there's Masioti, 15.9 points per game, 4.1 rebounds, 47 from the field, 39% from three, and 86% from the free throw line. So he is someone who I'm going to want the line for Baylor late in the game. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets to the line a few times because he is that good at driving to the hoop. And then, once again, it's another guy who can stretch the defense a little bit. And it's nice to have someone who can stretch the defense because it gives you so many more options. If Houston knows you're going to be dominating inside the paint, they're not going to be worried about your shooters. The top three guys for Baylor, or at least how I have it listed, are all competent shooters. The final guy is Davion Mitchell, who I mentioned is a 63.3% free throw shooter, but he is a knockdown shooter otherwise. 45% from three, 52.3% from the field, 14 points per game, 5.3 assists. He's very similar to Donovan Mitchell. You've seen the memes probably, but they both wear 45. Last name Mitchell, similar builds, similar game styles. But if I'm Baylor, I'm not complaining. To have a guy who's similar to an all-star in the NBA, not complaining too much. Davion Mitchell has emerged big time in the NCAA tournament. And this is the three right here for Baylor that will be crucial if they want to win. Looking at the Houston side, let's flip the page. Houston, 3 losses all season. Had a very interesting road to get to the Final Four. Baylor's, by the way, very easy road. After their first round game, they played Wisconsin, not a great team by any stretch. I thought if it was UNC, they could have lost that game, but it was Wisconsin. Then they played Villanova, who was beaten and battered to begin with. And then they played Arkansas. Arkansas was a solid team this year, but they weren't a Final Four contention team. Had they made it to the Final Four, it would have been because Ohio State lost and Baylor had not played well. Houston's had a much tougher road. They played Cleveland State in the first round, blew them out. There you go, bada bing, bada boom. Then they play Rutgers. They barely hold on to that one. Rutgers led late in that one. They demolished Syracuse, a game that no one thought they would win, or a lot of people didn't think they would win. And then they played Oregon State in the Elite Eight. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Oregon State. I mean, no one thought that Oregon State and Houston would have been the Elite Eight matchup, probably. Or, excuse me, not a lot of people. They probably would have thought it would have been Illinois. And yet still, they played well against Oregon State. And it's partially because they have a trio of very solid players. We'll get to the team per game stats. So we'll start with the players. Quentin Grimes, 18 points per game, 5.8 rebounds, 4.8 field goal or shooting from the field, 41.3% from three, 78 from the free throw line. He is the guy. He got into a little foul trouble against Syracuse, was solid against Oregon State in a nice bounce back game. This is a guy who could lead this team to a national championship game, at least in the appearance. Kind of eerily similar to Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon. Obviously not that good, but that guy who could just take over a game like Houston has had in the past. Then you got Dijon Giroux. He's just a guy who does everything. 10.8 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game. Does shoot 71% from free throw line. Little concerning, but not too concerning. 43.7% from the field, 35.2% from three, 4.4 assists. So this is someone who's going to do a lot. He'll play good defense. He'll move around. He'll just be a nice disruptor and really be a Robin to Quentin Grimes and Batman. Then finally, Justin Gorham, 8.5 points, 8.7 rebounds, so can get it done in both regards there. 49% shooting from the field, 67.9% from a free throw line. Free throw percentage is concerning, but got a nice interior presence, so if Quentin Grimes can't get going, they can dump it off to Gorham, and more often than not, he'll make Baylor pay on the inside, and that is probably what you're going to need in this one. And looking at the per-game stats on the season, 76 points per game. Their opponents score 57.6, so this is going to be a high-scoring game. Don't get me wrong. 43.7 field goal percentage, 37.3 opponent shooting, so not a great defensive team, but still solid. This is a team that shoots 73% from the free throw line and 13 free throw attempts per game this season. So still not so much better than Baylor, but coming down the stretch, I have more confidence in Houston to make a clutch free throw than I do Baylor. 40.9 rebounds per game. Like I mentioned, one of the best rebounding teams in the country. And that could prove to be the difference. We saw multiple games this NCAA tournament. Houston dominating on the glass and getting multiple chances. The more chances you get, the more likely you are to score. And that could be ultimately what decides for Houston. 10.6 turnovers a game, 14.3 forced turnovers, 8.1 steals. So they're not as good at forcing turnovers like Baylor is, but they will make up for it in offensive rebounds. So that is where I'm really looking in at. It's ultimately coming down to what is more, forced turnovers by Baylor or offensive rebounds points off turnovers for Baylor, second chance points for Houston. Whichever one is more will dictate who wins that game. Sorry, I just had an email from nothing important. But ultimately, I am going to go with the Cougars in this one. I just feel like this team has it all. They're a more complete, well-rounded team. Baylor's looked great all season, so I wouldn't be surprised if they win. But I feel like this just has the making of an upset in the Final Four. Quentin Grimes will have a phenomenal game, and I like Houston in this one to make it to the championship game. Now looking to the other game, like I mentioned, it starts at 8:34 on CBS. Why, I do not know. But it's Gonzaga, the number 1 overall seed, taking on UCLA. And we'll start with UCLA. Johnny Juzang has been phenomenal. 15.5 points per game, 28 versus Michigan in the Elite Eight. And he got hurt at one point, too. He got pulled a little bit, rolled his ankle, and then came back and was just really good. 34.7% from 3, 42.9% from the field. So he's the go-to guy. If Gonzaga can stop him, they win. Then again, I honestly think Gonzaga's going to win, but I'll explain more in a moment. 72.9 per game, points per game for UCLA, 67.6 opponent points per game. So this is another team that's not a super great defensive team, but it's going to be a high-scoring one if UCLA can get out and running. But then again, we saw what Gonzaga did against USC and just really bottled them up. USC is a much better team than UCLA, in my opinion. And then looking at the rest of the stats, there's nothing else that really jumps off the page. 6.8 three-pointers per game, solid. They shoot 71% from the line. They allow 31 rebounds to their 35 per game. So it's going to be a close rebounding battle, and Gonzaga's a good rebounding team for the most part. And 12.7 points off turnovers. So it's really nothing that jumps off the page for UCLA. And against Gonzaga, you're going to have a near-perfect game and then them not to be good. I don't see that happening. Gonzaga, 91.6 points per game. I've been drinking the haterade on Gonzaga all season long. Now I finally think, this is the one game where I'm like, okay, they're going to win. There's no way. If they lose this game, it will be because UCLA played the game of their lives. Plain and simple. They're holding their opponent 68.5 points per game, 54.9% shooting as a team, 73.4% from the free throw line, but they shoot 16 plus a game. So they're getting their opportunities. They're really good inside. 38 rebounds, 7.6 three-pointers per game, 19.1 points off turnovers. They really feast off forcing turnovers. And it's that big three. Drew Timme, Corey Kispert, Jalen Suggs. Jalen Suggs is going to be a top 10 player in the NBA draft, most likely. He has 14 points per game, 50% shooting, 4.5 assists, 1.9 steals. Really balanced player. Corey Kispert, 18.9 points per game, 53.5 shooting, 45.3% from 3, 88.5 from the free throw line. And then you got Timme, 19 points, 7.2 rebounds, 65% shooting from the field. There's nothing that this team can't do. They are so good top to bottom, and it's going to take a miracle for UCLA to beat them. So I obviously have Gonzaga winning. I'm going to go Gonzaga, Houston, in the NCAA championship game. I don't think anything that people would have thought at the beginning of the season. No way. Not many people would have thought Gonzaga, Houston in the NCAA championship, but here we are. That is my prediction with the Final Four. Hope you enjoyed the games. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. And until tomorrow when I preview the women's championship game, enjoy the basketball games, and I'll see you next time.